and welcome. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to be reviewing this brand new 2024 Toyota BZ4X. I actually almost forgot the last letter there because it's just so hard to remember. I mean, try telling that to your friends. But anyways, this is the latest EV from Toyota, and today I'm going to see if this vehicle is worth its weight in solid gold, coming in at about $60,000 for the model I have here today, which comes with all-wheel drive and, of course, the technology package. So let's get into the review. Let's start off with the exterior styling, and I'm not quite sure as to what Toyota was trying to accomplish with the looks of this vehicle. I mean, it's very edgy, you know, the one kid from high school, kind of like them. Meaning that it's just very all over the place. It's kind of got some unique looks to it. And honestly, like there's a lot of these little creases here in the bodywork, especially more near the back end. It's got more creases, honestly, than a wrinkled shirt. But other than that, though, it doesn't look all that bad. I mean, starting here up with the hood here, I don't really like this cheap plastic black trim there. That's going to scratch easily, of course. But then we get down to the front end here, the nice end, and actually look at the front and actually see that the headlights here, they're nice with that multiple LED in there, but also this like kind of cheap aftermarket plastic piece on top of the headlights. I mean, that's kind of a fad that I thought died out years ago. But other than that, there is some other things here that are kind of unique. You do have a lower grille here to allow air movement, and then you do have a front camera as well as your parking sensors. But not to mention, to add that little bit of cool unique factor, you do have these little air scoops on the side, which I think is pretty unique. But other than that, let's go to the side of the vehicle. All right, I'll start here at the front of the vehicle and work my way to the back. Now we do have more of this plastic cladding from the front here, no surprise. Continue through the wheel arch to give you that kind of off-road rugged look. Down through the side and to the back wheel arch. Now up here you do have your plug-in, of course, because this is an EV, which you have two ports, and one is a level 2, and I think there's even a level 3. So you have AC and DC fast charging, so that's quite lovely, I'm sure. And then down here we do have our 20-inch alloy wheel, which I think actually looks all right. You know, they didn't do like an all black kind of wheel. Personally, it's not my thing anyway. So yeah, you won't notice the dust as easily. But regardless, it's not a bad style. I don't mind it. So let's continue further back here, and then we do have our side view mirror, which they did have a puddle light underneath. And because this vehicle is equipped with the 360 camera, of course you have your camera mounted here as well. And then moving down the rest, I do like the fact that there is no real chrome on this vehicle, by the way. So no chrome door handles, and there's just a little bit up here, but it's tasteful, it's not overdone. And then down here, of course, we have more plastic cladding, which seems to be the thing on this vehicle. And then moving towards the back here, we have kind of a taste, rather, of what the tail light is like, because it kind of protrudes into the side a little bit, maybe a little bit unnecessary in my opinion, especially as this part does nothing, no illumination whatsoever. And that's pretty much it. All right, now we've made our way to probably the most interesting part of the exterior, and that is, of course, the back end here. Now there is a lot going on, just as much as there is on every other part of this vehicle. And the first thing you'll probably notice is up here at the top here, there is no rear wiper. And yes, Toyota does know about this, and they're going to apparently add it for the next model year, if I'm not mistaken. And then that leaves you to this up here, which is the spoiler. Now I don't know, I'm kind of mixed on it. I mean, is it unique? Yes. Is it cool? I don't know, maybe it'll grow on me. But it's kind of split here in the center. It kind of goes further in, and then you get a little arrow sort of look to it, and then back out again. Here, it really comes out quite a ways, actually. It really makes it hard to clean up in there. But other than that, though, it's kind of unique, I'll give it that. And then you work your way back down the glass here, and then you have another little spoiler that is, well, it's just there. And then it leads you to what's like, I like to call a unibrow taillight, meaning that it just is a continuous LED strip all the way through the back here, which I think looks pretty cool. And I know that Lexus has this on all their vehicles as well. But as I was saying, kind of from the side point of view, though, that this little piece of plastic down here, it just does nothing, really. I mean, I don't really get it, but anyways, it's there. And then you have your backup camera, of course, and then you have your badges, which, in case if you forgot the vehicle already, because I probably have, it's the BZ4X, and it's the EV with the all-wheel drive. So again, it's all there. And not to mention, you do have your rear parking sensors as well. Of course, there is no exhaust tips because this is an electric vehicle, so don't get too excited. You join me in the interior, and it's quite a nice place to be overall. I mean, the styling is definitely a bit more subtle than the exterior, definitely not as edgy. But overall, I think they've done a nice job with all the fit and finishes, with the materials, and not to mention, Toyota's even gone on record to say that they've used a more environmentally friendly approach to design this vehicle and the materials that they used, meaning they've used recycled sea turtles and what have you. Even these leather seats, which actually not are leather seats, they're actually called Softex seats, which is a more environmentally friendly approach, which are quite nice because they're heated and air cooled. Those are quite nice and comfortable. The rest of the interior as well, like the overall, like the fit and finishes here, like the armrest, it feels nice. Plastic, it's a little bit, you know, scratchy in some places, but overall, for what you're getting, I think it's okay. Speaking of the center console area, you do have a large storage bin to fit whatever you want. You do have cup holders down here in the center, which aren't that big. They're just standard cup holders. And then you kind of move up to the center here. You do have a lot here. And the one thing that I can't stand, and I thought manufacturers got rid of a long time ago, that is piano black finish trim. You know, the glossy stuff, the stuff that scratches like so easily and drives you crazy after about 5 months after owning a vehicle. Yeah, that's the stuff. You have lots of it in the center area here. Hiding, of course, underneath this panel is your wireless charger. And then you move up further here, you have a lot of buttons, which is nice. You have your 360 camera, parking assist in case you can't park your vehicle yourself, heaven forbid. Then you also have your dial here in the center for your shifter, which I quite like that they at least kept an actual somewhat physical shifter of sorts, not just a bunch of buttons to press. So thank you, Toyota. And then you have, of course, your parking brake adjustments there on the left side. And then you move up, of course, to this lovely display here, which is, of course, part of the technology package, the larger screen. You have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so everything that's standard now. And then you have, of course, your climate control, which is kind of cool because you have automatic climate control for your seats. That's kind of odd. So basically, if your vehicle's hot on a hot summer day, it will just turn your seats on to cool. I don't know, that's pretty neat. I like that idea. And not to mention you have your push button start down here by the vents, your trip computer, and then working your way up onto the dash, that's where it gets a little bit interesting because they've used something that I never thought was gonna be something to see in vehicles ever again, especially a vehicle costing this much. And that is sort of like a carpeted fabric material on the dash, which is just cheap, I'm gonna say. Years ago when I was at the Vancouver Auto Show, I saw that Chevy had that in their Cruze where their push button start was. I thought that was just stupid because it's gonna get dirty and then who's gonna clean that, right? So I kind of see the same thing happening here. It's just gonna be a big dust magnet and good luck trying to extract all that dust and spillage or whatever that you're gonna get on your dash. But yes, not by any means perfect design there. And then you move over to sort of where the driver is, and there's basically your steering wheel, which has more buttons than you know what to do with. I mean, it's all right, but you really don't need this many things on your steering wheel. It's kind of distracting, to be honest. You both have your turn signal stock with your automatic headlights and then your automatic wiper controls on the right. And then you have this sort of like weird display because it's weird in that you have like these two pieces of plastic that kind of tunnel it down and kind of focus your eyes on there, which is kind of nice in some ways. Overall, I'm not really convinced about the styling of it, and the fact that it wants to be a heads-up display but it can't, I think, is another thing in itself. But overall, it's nice. It gives you the information that you want to see. One problem I do have, though, is that sometimes I can't really see everything on the display. I can at least see my speed, which is important, but overall, I don't care for it. I think it could be a little bit better if you ask me. A couple other nice things about this interior, of course, is the fact that you do have your panoramic roof, and I don't really even consider it really a panoramic roof because those typically have a continuous piece of glass that you can see out of, and this one has kind of like two separate pieces there, which is still nice regardless. I mean, even for your rear passengers, they get a little bit of light back there, but not really what I was expecting for a vehicle like this. And then also you have, your frameless mirror up here, which is quite nice. LED interior, which is really cool too. I mean, this didn't even come on the RAV4 that I test drove last year. And a couple other nice things too was the JBL audio system, which is, sounds really crisp. Now you're wondering, for $60,000, what else do you truly get in here? Well, I mean, you don't get a glove box, that's for sure. You get more of this kind of felted material or fabric material that you get on the dash. You do get a power driver's seat, but no memory, of course, just power driver, with more piano gloss trim on the sides. the doors there, which is lovely. No power seat on the passenger side. It is a 6-way adjustable, which is nice, so at least you can do a little bit more adjustments than your standard forward and backwards and recline. But other than that, that's pretty much it. I mean, at least for the front here. So let's go into the back. Step inside the rear seating area, and it's quite a nice place to be. I mean, I have loads of space back here, and even my head space, like between my head and the roof liner, it's quite a difference. And I'm 5'11", so I'm not short exactly, but I do have a load of knee space here for the driver's seat that's set to my position currently. And even for my feet down here, like I can actually move my toes, surprisingly, underneath there a little bit. And not to mention that the seats themselves, again, that nice soft text material, feels really good and cushioned back here. And then you can also even do a slight recline back here, which gives you just a little bit more comfort on those long distance trips. And then just like any other vehicle you come to expect, you know, a dome light here, which actually is nice because it has its own controls. You do have a center armrest here, which gives you cup holders and a little sort of slot here to probably put your phone or something. And then on the doors here, you do have a storage cubby for larger drinks. And of course, like we all like the piano gloss trim back here. That's back here as well. And then you also have a little bit of soft touch material on the door, which is kind of surprising actually. Usually manufacturers cheap out and don't do that. And then for all you that really care, yes, there is heated seats back here, and there is 2 USB-C ports, which is the way it's going nowadays. And then you also have 2 vents. But an added bonus here, which I kind of think is nice, is that they did give you 2 map pockets on both the driver and passenger seat, which is kind of surprising. But again, I will give them credit for that. So I think this is kind of the gist of the rear seating area. So let's go check out the back cargo area and see how that is. Just like the 2021 Toyota RAV4 that I reviewed about a year ago, this vehicle is also equipped with a power liftgate. So I figured it'd be a good opportunity to see, well, how much technology has improved in the last few years and compare the two, at least opening and closing, to see if this one is a lot quicker. So just like the Toyota RAV4, there's a multitude of ways to open up the rear liftgate. And that is, of course, there's a button here on the interior. There is a button here located on the key fob, which is in my pocket. There's also a button down here on the actual liftgate itself. And not to mention, if you have good stability like myself, sometimes, you can actually even use your foot. Okay, well, when it actually works, but we'll just use the regular button for now and see how quickly it opens. I don't know about you, but it actually just seems quicker already. I haven't done the actual numbers yet, but I feel like this one's already quicker. But let's find out. Now that we're in the rear cargo area, it's actually still kind of spacious, surprisingly, for a vehicle that has a really harsh roof line towards the back here. Of course, larger items, at least height-wise, like rectangular items, are going to be a bit of a challenge, but yet there still is quite a bit of space to make things work. And I do like the fact that this vehicle does come with the rubber floor mat here, and even on the back seats as well, which is a nice touch, because when you do fold them down, which I will do right now for you, you do get quite a bit of space back here. I mean, there is still a little bit of a hump. It's not perfectly flat, but that's to be expected with any vehicle. You don't have any 12-volt power outlets back here, which is actually kind of a bit of a surprise. I mean, even if it is an EV, you would expect that. You do have your JBL subwoofer back here, which is kind of lovely, but other than that, it's pretty much it. All right, it's time to get this thing out on the road and see how it does in everyday driving. Now, today's driving impressions are basically just going to be on paved roads, because let's face it, you're not going to take this vehicle off anything more challenging than just a gravel driveway. Now this car handles pretty well for a crossover. I mean, I've driven enough crossovers now, unfortunately, that I know how they handle, and it's not always pleasant. Although they are very much like cars, they have the higher ground clearance, and with that higher ground clearance comes a little bit of sacrifice on the handling, sometimes, not always. Now, I feel they definitely are getting better with these newer vehicles. They're definitely getting that sort of fine-tuned, and this vehicle is no exception, because I'm driving this back road now, and it's rather twisty, because that's where I like to take all my test vehicles, is on these kind of roads, because that's where it really shows its true colors. And honestly, this vehicle is doing pretty well. I mean, yes, there is a little bit of sort of tip over and those harder corners. Not really any understeer or anything, but definitely has a little bit of lean, obviously if you go a little too hard, but it kind of feels neutral all around, which is kind of nice actually. So you don't really feel like it's gonna be too much at any given point. It's just kind of the, just go with it sort of thing. And because it's electric, it's nice because you have that instant torque, so you don't have to worry about, you know, revving up and then, you know, having to downshift gears or whatever. It just kind of, it just all goes. And that's with a lot of EVs now. Some EVs, of course, they don't feel very quick. Like I've driven Nissan Leafs in the past, especially the newer ones. I mean, they're all right. But the older ones, the first generations, oh my God, those things were just boats basically. I mean, they weren't slow, really slow, but they just weren't very lively. Now this one here, I never thought I would say this, but this one actually feels like the most proper EV that should be out there. I mean, yes, Teslas, they've got their EVs as well, but this one's pretty good, I would admit, at least in terms of driving and handling. Now, I know some of you are gonna be curious about the range in this vehicle because, you know, range anxiety is a real thing, especially when it comes to EVs. And, you know, obviously, you know, you don't wanna know too late until your battery's depleted and you're left stranded looking for a gasoline generator to get you back up on your way. Now, this one vehicle in particular gets about 325 kilometers to about 450. Now, that's on a really good day and if the stars have aligned. But I've experienced actually pretty good numbers with that, actually. You know, every 300-ish you know, kilometers I can get between charges. And again, that's if I'm not using too much of the electronics, so none of the heated or cooled seats and things like that, because it does end up eating the battery a little bit. And, you know, other than that, I get pretty good results with this vehicle overall. I'm out here on the highway and the cabin's still relatively quiet. I mean, it's not as quiet as a Lexus. And actually, speaking of Lexus, there is a Lexus variant of this exact same vehicle. It's called the RZ, and it's the 450e, I believe. And yeah, I mean, the one I saw at the Vancouver Auto Show about a couple months ago, it just looked like a big Duracell battery. And I mean, styling wise, it's very much similar with a lot of the same cues, especially the tail lights, that whole kind of back end. But the front end is slightly different, but again, it's a Lexus, right? It's a bit more premium. And then also, not to mention that there is a Subaru variant of this vehicle as well. It's called the Subaru Solterra. Now, I've actually seen one of those on the road the other day, surprisingly, and it didn't look all that bad. I'm kind of torn with this vehicle, to be honest. I mean, I'm not usually a fan of EVs and crossovers especially, but when you combine those two things I most commonly dislike, surprisingly, it's not horrible. I'm not hating this vehicle by any means, or EVs, but usually these kind of vehicles don't do it for me, but this one surprisingly is all right. I'm not gonna give it accolades or anything like that, but it's definitely an all right vehicle. I mean, if it wasn't for the price point of about $60,000 for this fully loaded all-wheel drive model, I would probably consider it for sure. I mean, yes, there are government incentives. So you can get about $10,000 here in British Columbia, Canada, incentives for buying EVs in general. So it's really tough to make a decision. I mean, yes, you want to save a little bit, of course, especially if you're not going to, you know, commute to work. I mean, if I'm going to commute to work, I don't think I'm going to drive this vehicle, especially because I commute at least over 100 kilometers in a given day. So I don't think this vehicle is quite for me. But if you're just running to the grocery store or, you know, going to volunteer at the local shelter, that's fine. This vehicle might do it for you. But for me, no, it will not do it for me because it is too much of a risk. Well, my final thoughts on this Toyota BZ4X is it's not all that in a bag of chips, but it's not bad either because it does kind of blend the balance of economical in terms of what you get in terms of range, that is, and also not terrible to drive. However, as I was mentioning, this particular trim that I'm driving here today, the basically top of the line with the technology package and all-wheel drive, comes in at about $60,000, and even with the grants in here in BC being about $10,000, it still doesn't cut the mustard, basically, meaning that it's still not that cheap. You're spending about $50,000. And of course, there is other taxes I'm sure I'm missing on top of the $60,000 price tag. And therefore, I would not, and I mean would not, want to spend that amount of money on a vehicle like this. I mean, granted, this vehicle is targeted, I would say, at a more established audience, meaning an elderly audience, someone who basically just goes and gets groceries and maybe goes down to the beach or on a very short distance trip. Now, this vehicle is good for that, I would say. It doesn't drive all that bad either for what they're asking. But would I buy this vehicle? No, and I don't think you should either, unless you are desperate for an EV and want something that is of the Toyota brand and not, let's say, a Tesla. But otherwise, I would hold off maybe a little bit longer for these kinds of vehicles because, again, the technology is still kind of unknown. And again, for a price tag of this amount of money, it's best to wait, I think, for now. If you did enjoy today's review on this Toyota, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and also consider subscribing so that way you don't miss any future reviews like this one, and also DIYs and projects on my channel. And until next time, take care. Bye now.